Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Bernice Chow, and I'm really humbled and super excited to talk to two amazing people today. We have Gabrielle and Greg, and they are the creators of Out North. If you haven't seen this film already, go check it out. It is so great and so wonderfully touching. Gabrielle Woodland is a director and producer at Bindery that works in the Nashville, Atlanta region, getting her start as a former multimedia producer at Nashville's NBC affiliate, WSMV TV. She has a passion for documentary storytelling. And Greg Bisham, founder and CEO of Bindery. In 2012, Greg founded New York City-based Bindery, an award-winning indie film and content studio, with the mission to craft stories that last. Informed by his experience as a filmmaker, Bindery success comes from its script-to-screen studio model, where development, production, and post all come together under one roof. He currently runs a development slate over a dozen projects, including the TV show Neurotica, starring Karen Gillan of Avengers and Jumanji. He is a native Texan. Greg lives in New York City with his wife and 4 kids. Well, thank you both for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So I want to get into the development of this piece. How did the story come about? Was there a business need that needed to be answered?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think, especially here talking about brand storytelling and how brands are telling much deeper stories to engage with audiences. I think this is such a great example of working with a brand who had the courage to really reach beyond just that sort of traditional medium of television commercials in order to tell their story. And so, it started about in 2020. We were sort of in the midst of COVID, and we were seeing these small business owners really, really struggling with making ends meet and sort of being able to sell their products, especially those who relied on brick and mortar stores. And so Fiverr, we sort of worked with Fiverr to create a campaign around transformation. So Fiverr really stands for creating opportunities for anyone, anywhere. And so from a high level perspective for their brand campaign, we were really finding these incredible true stories of small business owners who were dealing with this really difficult point in time, but they were using the Fiverr platform in order to transform both themselves and their business digitally in order to reach new audiences, in order to launch new products, to bring their inventory online, for example, and really just take it to the next level. And so we were filming in Nashville. Gabby and our other director, Eric, were filming those stories. And as we were doing that, we uncovered a much bigger story within this neighborhood of North Nashville that was really a story about hope and resiliency that spoke a lot to what we were doing on the commercial campaign for these small businesses, but at a much bigger level. And so at that point, Gabby and Eric and I all talked about, how do we take this really important story that we know needs to be told, and how do we pair that with this brand that we know already really cares about telling stories about creating opportunity? And so we developed a very quick pitch. We did it as we were filming this project. We pitched it to Fiverr. They were super receptive, and luckily really jumped on board and put their weight behind it. And that's how we sort of, that's how we started the process of kind of filming this piece of content that felt very different from their commercial campaign, yet very aligned with their brand ethos and purpose.
That's really incredible that, the story kind of revealed itself. But then on top of that, you had such amazing people in the film. How did you find those individual stories?
Yeah, I think, I grew up in Nashville. So I think a lot of what you see in the film, like the gentrification, the school to prison pipeline, I mean, especially being Black and living in Nashville, you just feel that. You have a lot of people, I think at one point, I'm not sure if it's still the same, but I think it was like 2015, they said like 100 people were moving there each day, which is an insane number. And yeah, living there, like when I lived in college or back in college, nobody came to Nashville ever. We didn't even go to Nashville to like have fun on the weekend. Like we stayed in Murfreesboro, which is about an hour outside. But then as the years progressed, it was like everybody was going to Nashville. Driving through Nashville, you just see new buildings every day. Every time I go back, it's like the skyline looks different. So I think just growing up there, you see all these changes all the time. And one of the people we covered in one of the Fiverr stories was this this pizza shop, Slim and Huskies, and they have an amazing story. They all grew up in Nashville together. They played football together at Tennessee State University. They started a business together, like just collaborating in their college dorm. And they ended up selling, it was a moving company, and they did that. They ended up getting it to be, I think it's like a 6-figure company, and then they sold it. And then from there, they're like, we're going to start making pizza. And the great thing about them is they want to include everyone in the neighborhood. You know, I think with gentrification, a lot of times it looks like, white people coming into the neighborhood and pushing out, the minorities that already live there. But what Slim and Huskies wanted to do was include the people that live in their neighborhood. So they hire, all the kids from the neighborhood to work there. The pizza is not super expensive, so it's also affordable for people who already live there. So I knew those guys just from previous projects that we worked on. And I think from there, just living in the area, it was, I think the thing with documentaries is like when you find a story like that, people want other people to know. So I think once you show that you're a kind individual and you really want to help, but you're not like trying to invade their space, you're more so trying to like show a light. It was easy to go from one person to the next person to the next person for them to be like, hey, this is also happening in our community. Like, let's talk about this. And working with Eric, we're both pretty chill people. I think everybody at Bindery is like pretty chill and kind. And we're there. We just want to, do the best job to show the truth of who these people are. So we just kept showing up. We kept listening to them. And I think too, I mean, maybe Greg could speak better to this. I feel like Fiverr was cool with whatever we did. We were like, oh, this is what they're telling us. And Fiverr never really said anything about, oh, we need to change this or we need to change this. They were pretty okay with, telling the truth of what was happening in the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there was definitely a lot of faith there that we would sort of treat the story in the best way and just tell the story in the way it should be told. And I think when you kind of move from sort of like a really well-crafted commercial campaign that everyone has sort of signed off on, and we've even though it's documentary, a lot of the times we're writing those scripts even before we sit down to do the interview, just so everyone is really aligned on what the key messaging points are. And there might change here and there when you get into the interview, but we all kind of know what we want to get out of it. And we were just very transparent that we had a general sense of where this story was going to go. But we really didn't know what we would end up with, which is sort of that kind of leap of faith that you always take when you jump into, sort of a fully original piece of content, especially a documentary. It's, we have a general sense, a thesis on, the stories that we want to, these kind of like micro stories that we want to explore, and hopefully they kind of build to something bigger. And so we do as much planning as we can there. And we were keeping them abreast of what that planning was and those themes and the people that we wanted to speak with. But yeah, we really they didn't get to see really what the story was ultimately going to be about until they started to see the rough cuts. So there's a lot of faith that, they put in us to get the story right and to do it justice. But it wasn't something that could be heavily crafted. We just sort of had to be there and understand what the truth was. And then kind of take it and kind of move in different directions, depending on new people that we got introduced to or new storylines that made sense for us to follow. And so, from that perspective, it was just a really cool opportunity to have that freedom to explore the story in that way.
That's really remarkable, the synergy of the teams and just the stories that you found. Were there any challenges that you've met a lot that came along the way?
I guess COVID. That's the first. I'm like, no, I don't think there was any. I think COVID became a big challenge towards the end because it was also becoming winter, and it was just like people aren't. I feel like documentaries, they're pretty easy to shoot when it's summer because everybody's out, so it's easy to get B-roll and find people to talk to because you're just walking down the street. And Nashville's obviously not like New York. There's not just people on the sidewalk hanging out all the time. So I think the mix of COVID and winter towards the end, we were like, wait, like we need more people. And that was really the only challenge I can think of. Like, I think people were pretty open to speaking with us. But obviously I think COVID was hard for any filmmaker at that time. And so that became a little bit of a challenge, but not too many challenges from my side of things.
That's pretty great. I definitely created a commercial during COVID, and it was stock, which was not the best situation. So no, that's really great that you're able to navigate that time. Were there any other standout moments on set?
I mean, I think the biggest thing, Rashida, obviously her story, I mean, there's so many moments, but I think Rashida's story, and like when she told, like, first when you said that, what came to my mind was when she told the story of her student that passed away, like just that stuck with her for so long. And that's why she does what she does today. I think that was like such a big moment. Just because, yeah, there are so many, you see that, like, especially when you're talking to the young kids and you're talking to a lot of the different people in Gideon's army, you see like this switch in a young kid's mind, like, when they're trying to make that decision of like, what's best for me and how can what am I trying to say? Like, it's easier to live in this, like to be a part of the streets sometimes than it is to, take the hard route and, stay in school and things like that. So her story was just so important because it was like she saw that switch in him when the years progressed. And then that stuck out to me. Yeah, I mean, there's so many people. One person that didn't get highlighted as much as I would have liked to in the final cut, but that we met, Mama T. There's a portrait of her in there, but I mean, her story was amazing. She, lived in the projects in Nashville. Gideon's army was knocking on doors. Like, I think it was like Thanksgiving. They were knocking on doors, handing out turkeys, and she met them. And I think she had some dental issues and they actually paid for her. And then she started dedicating a lot of her free time to like help with Gideon's army. And she just like helped so many of the kids in the neighborhood, and Gideon's army gave her a car. I mean, so her story was just amazing that, she was able to give back after she was like freely given so many things. And then just seeing the impact Gideon's army had in the community, like one of the final days we filmed, and you see it towards the end of the film, it was, I mean, it felt like hundreds of cars were lined up for this, like, I think it was like either Thanksgiving or Christmas. It was Thanksgiving because they were handing out turkeys, they were handing out food and soaps and, bathrooms, like just clothes, tons of stuff. And it felt like lines and lines of people were lined up. And it's just, I don't know, it was crazy to see because sometimes you're like, how can we help the community? And like the government says they want to do it and you don't see them do anything. And then you see Gideon's army like out there and like everybody in the neighborhood knows they have enough stuff for everybody in the neighborhood. So yeah, that was just really cool to watch, especially, Nashville had the tornado too. And the beginning of, it was like the tornado happened, then COVID happened. And yeah, it was just a tough time to live in Nashville. So it was amazing to watch what Gideon's army was doing, even for the tornado relief as well.
I love hearing updates about people in the movie and their stories. It's great to hear that the community is still supporting one another and doing so many amazing activations. Can you tell us about kind of the performance of this film, the awards, other festivals, kind of where this film has gone?
Yeah, so I mean, Gabby and Eric, I mean, just did a really fantastic job of capturing this and kind of putting all of these characters on, or just real people, their character onto screen. And I think it just resonated a lot with people. And one of the things that got us sort of thinking about this early on was this stat that we had read, which was that I think it was 1 in 3 people, 1 in 3 men in that community had been incarcerated, which was the highest incarceration rate in the country. And as we were there filming this campaign, like, that didn't make any sense. This was a community that was very vibrant, that people were helping each other out. And so that's when we started to kind of peel that onion and start to see what was really sort of at the root of all of this. And so I think what was so successful about the film was that we had these real humans, these characters that we were listening to and hearing their stories. But then there was also this underpinning of, eminent domain issues, systemic racism, school to prison pipeline. There are real societal issues that I think allowed the humans and the characters and the people speaking about them, allowed all of that to resonate better with the audience. And so, I think it was, as a result of that, I think it was really well received. Gabby and Eric won the Best of Branded at Vimeo last year, which was just really remarkable. I mean, there's so many projects, really great projects that get nominated for that. And so to be the one that won was really crazy. And then I think we also won the Brand Film Awards. Is that, I don't know, you might not want to quote me on that, but I think we did well at the Brand Film Awards. And it's just been great to see the reception of it. And, again, having that emotional story that people can really connect to on the human level, but then also bring in these actionable things that we're seeing around school to prison pipeline or eminent domain, or whatever it is that allows people, I think, to then take that information and do something with it tangibly in their everyday lives when they start to see those topics be discussed. And if they're volunteering in their communities, they know where to go. They know to go to some place like a Gideon's Army to really create impact. And so, just combining that kind of emotional aspect with, the things that you should, that kind of activism aspect, I think made it successful.
100%. And huge congratulations on all that wonderful success. I definitely resonated with the message of hope at the end. And I really do hope that, we continually volunteer and kind of give back. Is there anything you want to say, you want people to take away from the film? What can they do?
Yeah, I think that's always the hard part of documentaries, is like, you always feel like you want to do more. It's like, is making the film enough? I think it's always my, when I finish something. But I think it is like, I like how you talked about it ended in hope, because I think that was really important for me and Eric to, not just like you watch this film and then you feel sorry for everyone. It's like, no, like everybody in the community is like working hard to like change what has been going on. I think what's always important for me, like I hope people took away from the film, is like being, just thinking about their community differently. And, it's like, I'm young, I moved to Brooklyn, I moved to Bed-Stuy. It's like, even though I'm Black, I'm still a gentrifier, but it's like, what can I do to also participate in the community and not just take from it? So I think it's like, what can you learn from the film and how can you be different in your own life? And not just watch it and like, move on to the next thing. It's like, oh, how can I watched something that, was interesting and sparked my interest in, different topics. So yeah, I just hope people take something from it and are able to like, think about things differently and also participate in their community differently.
Well, thank you both, Gabrielle and Greg, for this conversation. If you haven't seen Out North yet, it is a wonderful film. Please check it out. And thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your festival.
Yeah, thank you all for watching.